got an idea for the start.
Oh.
But it doesn't really matter until that red light's not flashing. Is that red light not flashing, Dave? Because if that's flashing, it means we're not recording, and that would be really embarrassing and time-consuming.
I appreciate your eyesight is somewhat degraded due to your advancing years, but that light is definitely not flashing and it is recording. And I did also already say it's recording.
Yeah, I know, but that was part of the gag, which you've completely ruined. So I guess it's just welcome to the Constant Geekery podcast.
I've got to be honest, Pete, I think that's our worst intro yet. It's amazing that people keep tuning in to listen to us.
And saying that they enjoyed the intro, which is always also amazing.
Amazing.
If we ever do one that we think's really good, people are going to go, that fell flat, lads.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome, everybody. It's nice to have you with us again for some more tech chat and maybe some British banter and sarcasm thrown in there. We sometimes do that.
Yeah. If only we were British. Coffee and geekery is what we have today.
Yeah, we do have some incredibly strong coffee, which is a good thing. So what's on the show today? We're just going to cover a little bit of tech news. I want to just relate a customer experience that I had. I'm full of these lovely stories, so I shall regale you with a tale of customer service gone wrong.
Honestly, you're turning into... For our British viewers, you might get this. Anne Robinson, when she was on Watchdog, it's just like this week on Watchdog. For your US, just look up Anne Robinson Watchdog. You'll get the weakest link. You'll get it.
Thanks for that. I don't know whether that was a compliment to Anne or an insult at me, or a bit of both.
It was a compliment to you both because you're both consummate professionals in the consumer rights arena.
Okay, so getting back to being a consummate professional, we were talking about what's on the show. Our main topic today, Pete, is going to be Apple's App Store. And we did talk about this a little bit last week, but we thought we'd delve into it in a bit more detail. Is the App Store fair? Epic, Spotify, Tinder, Tile, and many others say it is not.
Yeah, I've got a view.
Okay, we shall look forward to hearing that,
Sure, many have.
view. Excellent. And we'll maybe cover off a few of your comments as well if we've got time at the end. So first of all, bit of tech news. Now, we're recording this on the 17th of May. It should hopefully go live today on the 17th. And tomorrow, there's talk that Apple is releasing some new stuff. First of all, I think no massive surprise is that there's going to be a new tier for Apple Music with lossless files. So CD quality audio and also high-res audio if you're into that, if you buy into that whole thing.
Do you? Because I know you're a bit of an audiophile.
I think maybe that is a topic for another podcast. It works in some circumstances.
Okay.
And in others it does not. The problem is with it, a lot of music is not recorded in high-resolution format. So, particularly for modern music, they use a lot of samples and things like that, which are not sampled in high resolution. And then they try to sell it as high resolution, and it's obviously not.
Definitively can't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of snake oil going on. That said, I have some high-res recordings of some orchestral music, and yeah, you can definitely tell the difference. When you've got a very busy sound stage, then it does seem to work.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, a good CD, well mastered, is pretty hard to beat if you've got decent equipment.
Yeah.
Truth is as well, just going to stay on this topic for a little bit longer because you opened this can of worms.
Sorry, folks.
The simple truth is that most people don't hear all of the music that's on their CD anyway.
No, I normally listen to the first 2 or 3 tracks and then get bored.
Well, some of us who have a longer attention span will listen to a whole album. What I'm talking about is bits of the sound file that you can't actually hear because your CD player's not up to the job, or your amp or your speakers or your headphones just can't do it.
So what you're saying is that your equipment or the weakest link in your equipment is going to be defining what you hear anyway.
Yeah, and I've got to say, folks, this is a dangerous, slippery slope / rabbit hole to get into, because if you start trying to get rid of all of the weak links in your system, you end up in this kind of weird situation where you consider paying £1,000 for a power cable.
Yeah.
I'll just be quick to say I've never paid £1,000 for a power cable, but I do know someone who has, and I'm sure it's a wonderful power cable. Does it give you £1,000 worth of upgrade?
Was it
No, is the answer to that.
was it wrapped in like a snake skin?
It's delivered to your door by some maidens of the.
Don't go there.
Shall we stop?
Yeah,
Okay.
we probably should. I mean, when it comes to lossless, I had a Tidal subscription for a number of years, and I did enjoy, like you say, when you've got a decent system that you're running on, some of the music on it was noticeably better. I would say this Apple were focusing in the wrong place with this. So I get why they want to do it, but as we're going to go on to later, I think Apple Music need to work on the UI of their app to begin with. It's just not as good as Spotify or Tidal.
And they also need to fix that annoying bug, which I seem to get and other people don't, but where the song will just randomly skip to the next song halfway through or a few seconds through or whenever Apple Music feels like it. It's very frustrating. And I will say, Apple Music, the quality is okay, but it's not good enough. If you've gone out, for instance, and bought a pair of very expensive headphones or some AirPods Max, which are very, very expensive headphones for what they are, or very good headphones, but they're just, I feel they're a bit overpriced. But if you've bought that kind of quality headphone, you are going to hear the inadequacies of the format.
Right.
So I think Apple has to improve the sound, and there's also some talk of possibly new AirPods or revised AirPods with, who knows, we'll see.
With what?
Well, new Appleness.
Because it does get to the point with all these upgrades where it's like, what is there left to do that you actually need?
Well, I'll tell you what, let's move it on to the Mac Mini, because there was something that was needed on the Mac Mini that wasn't there.
Fast Wi-Fi?
Fast USB ports, yeah, we've done all of those jokes.
Yeah.
The M1 Mac Mini is available now with 10 gigabit Ethernet, and this actually happened a few weeks back, and I forgot to bring it up. But it's
Tech news hot off the press.
hot off the press. It's just been quietly done, and it's a statement of intent from Apple, because I think it's going to mean a lot to data center owners, and the Mac Mini does very well in data centers, so I can see the M1 heading in that direction.
Okay.
So that's nice to see. Apple do have a bit of a history of doing stealth upgrades.
Yeah, it's not the first time, is it?
Although this isn't really a stealth upgrade, it's a stealth upgrade option. But I can remember buying a Mac Mini, was a G4 Mac Mini, right at the end of their life. And Apple did a stealth upgrade. So the sticker saying what the spec was in the box is not what you got. You actually got a faster CPU.
That's a bonus.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I think they were just clearing out the stock so they could start selling Intel stuff. So
Excellent.
anyway, that's a bit of tech news for us. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. So if you're watching and or listening to the podcast and it's past the 18th, then you'll know whether we were right or not.
Yeah. As most of our listeners or viewers know, we are always right. Except on the occasions where we get it wrong.
Except on those few occasions.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about trading online and how not to do it, Pete.
Go on.
I want to tell you this little story, and please forgive me, folks, and indulge me in this for a moment. We built a new garage on the side of our house
Okay.
to house motorcycles, and what we wanted was a nice sort of industrial workbench type situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as some people know, I share the house we live in with my parents, which sounds much worse than it is. So my dad is also a motorcyclist, so we're going to have basically a set each. I found these lovely cabinets. Long story short, order these cabinets. They turn up on a pallet. First thing that happens is the driver of the truck, he put the pallet on one of these loader things and then pushed it up the drive and damaged some of our brick paving. And he sort of saw that he'd done it and then just walked off, didn't even offer an apology, and which sort of set the tone of things to come, really. Accidents happen. It's no issue. It's not a problem. We replace the bricks. It's no big deal, but an apology wouldn't go amiss with it. Finally, we get to building these things, and we find one of the drawers and one of the cupboards has got just awful paint job done. One of the parts just isn't finished properly. It's missing a fold, so it just won't fit in the thing. And they sent us 2 left-hand end pieces for the desk bit. So I contacted the company. Oh, no problem, sir. We'll get that out urgently to you. Get you those replacement parts. So I gave them all the part numbers from the instruction book I was sent. And 2.5, 3 weeks later, they finally turn up, these bits, and I've been sent 2 more left panels
Wow.
for the desk. We didn't get the cupboard front. We got the drawer parts. So it's sort of like, oh, for goodness sake. So I phone them up. It's like, can't you get this right? And can you pick up this stuff? I'm building up a little pile of spare parts here. These are the parts I need. And then I double checked with the guy who was starting to get a bit shirty with me. I'm like, I'm definitely getting these 2 parts. I want the right hand end panel for the desk and this cupboard door. Yeah, definitely. 3 times I checked with him. Parts turn up, and I've been sent the wrong cupboard door and some other random part of the workbench. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. So back on the phone again.
Same guy?
No, different person this time. No, yeah, we'll definitely get that sent. And then this package arrives. The driver refuses to take away the other stuff, by the way, that they promised to pick up. This package arrives, and it's about 2 meters tall. So I can see straight away it's not the right part. It's obviously the back part of the thing. So, yeah, they got it wrong again.
So you haven't got your completed parts
No, I have
yet?
now.
Right.
Finally, I think fourth delivery, and they sent me another left-sided panel. But there was a right-sided panel in the box. So finally, we got it all done.
But couldn't you have not just, using maths, two lefts make a right? Could you not have just done that, just smashed them together?
Yeah, in Pete's world where those things are possible, I could have done that.
Pete's strange world.
It just the issue is you've got this customer service centre that's very friendly and they're dealing with stuff, but they're then passing on the message to a warehouse where they clearly must be employing people on minimum wage who just don't care. Just don't care. They'll just chuck anything in the box. What I didn't mention is that I got so frustrated I shot a video. I actually went in and shot a video of all of the bits and what parts I needed, made it very clear, and then I edited the video. And then, because it ended up being quite a large file, having spent all morning on it, I decided, well, I'll upload it to YouTube, but I'll make it unlisted. So I sent him an email, said, I've put it on YouTube. Don't worry, I'm not going to publish it. It's just unlisted. But, of course, that allows me to then see how many people watched it.
No one.
They didn't watch it.
Wow.
And I don't understand. If somebody, like we run a business, Pete, if somebody, phoned us up, left a message, they didn't return any of my calls, ignore emails, or somebody goes to the time to shoot a video to show you what the issues are, wouldn't you want to jump on that?
Well, definitely. And the thing that's been rattling through my head is all those deliveries, all those phone calls, backing and forthing, that company can't have made any money on the sale.
Can't have done. So
it's costing them, not just in sending out a few spare parts, but the constant failures. And it makes me wonder, this is a slightly different thing, but how companies wonder how they go out of business, and often it's because they're not getting the basics like that right. It's not. I don't know whether to say this or not, but I was the other day. I was round a department store in the UK that is sadly closing down. Has now actually closed down, and it was literally down to the bare bones. And they had the final offers, and I went in more out of, I admit, morbid curiosity than anything, because it was literally gutted. This massive store that was once one of the flagship brands in the UK. I'm talking 20, 30 years ago, but it's dwindled, as has much of the high street. And it was no wonder to me why it was that they just not changed with the time, because they were still selling products that the reductions were such. Just to give you an example, one pair of gentlemen's undergarments was £30, now £5. Well, I'm sure there are people out there that will be happy to pay £30 for one pair of underpants, but £5 from. You get what I'm saying? Do you know what I mean? And that wasn't the only example. It was just one that, it struck me that completely out of touch with reality. And it sounds like this business too. No one's actually looking at, actually, does this make sense that we've sent out 4, 5, 6 times? They must, you would think, have some kind of compliance or quality team saying how many times are we sending out to the same address? because that's it's a hole in our finances. And yet these businesses go on; they're allowed to trade with consistent losses, and then suddenly they collapse. And the sad impact is the consumers, but more importantly, those people that work there and depend on that for their living, which is the saddest part of this.
Although I would say if you work there, do your job properly.
But isn't it frustrating when the company doesn't provide you with the correct infrastructure? And I include in that systems, I include in that the recruitment process and the minimum standards of how again, we own businesses. We own a business, sorry, and we make sure that we've got a fantastic team who actually care.
And I do agree with that, but also historically you would go into a shop and you would ask the shop advisor about products because they would know the product. I mean, that just doesn't happen anymore. You go into any one of the electronics retailers and you ask someone a question, they go on the internet to look it up for you. It's like, well, I can do that. It's a total waste of everybody's time, and it's because these people who are employed there just don't care. They don't care about their job enough to learn the product. So nobody sat down and learned this particular product that I've bought to understand when I say I need this part, to go to it and go, oh, well, that's the part. To pull off parts off of the shelf that are clearly could not possibly in any stretch of the imagination be the part I'm asking for. There's obviously a massive disconnect there. And it's endemic also in companies that are actually pretty decent. So look at Lenovo. I mean, I like my Lenovo computer to workstation, but it had a noisy power supply when I got it. And I kid you not, folks, I'm on my 5th power supply, not because of any other reason other than Lenovo just keeps shipping out a replacement part without actually getting anybody to test it. Is this a noisy part? They obviously had a batch of noisy fans. So inside the power supply is a $5 fan.
Yeah.
And that's what's making the noise. So I ended up taking one apart and swapping the fan over and to make a functional one. But Lenovo just don't have a system. It's not possible for the customer service person to go to the warehouse, to pick a part, use their experience to plug it in and test it, and then send it to you. That's not possible. Their systems don't allow it. So instead, they'll send out 5 parts and do all the returns, and all of the cost just erodes their profit and gives you a rubbish service. Not
to mention, as you say, the environmental impact of that. And I know you could say, well, the lorry was going out anyway, but it does have an impact. It must do. And little things do make a difference. So, yeah, well, I'm sorry you had that dodgy. I feel like I've not let you finish the story, actually. So,
well, I have finished the story. The thing's done now and it looks fine. But to go from when we spent £1,600 on this stuff, it's not most expensive cabinets in the world, but they're not the cheapest. To be waiting 7 weeks to get the garage finished because of that, it's just pretty poor. I'm not going to name the company. I don't want to create any fuss for them or anything like that. I just thought it was an interesting example of how basic customer service has been lost.
Yep.
And we're all rushing in the tech world towards this Amazon world, and next day delivery and just total. Nobody cares about anything anymore. I mean, you have a problem with something on Amazon, you just send it back. They don't care, do they? Don't care if they make a loss on it.
No.
So we've probably spoken enough on this.
Yeah, but and that's where, again, Apple I don't think we ever have a podcast where we don't talk about Apple, and we know you guys like us talking about Apple, but that's why Apple retail stores are good. It's because by and large, the people in there do care. They're enthusiasts about the product and they know them. I went into an Apple store just over a week ago, and the guy in there was skipping with delight around the store, hiding AirTags so that my wife and I could play Find the AirTag. And it was great because he clearly cared. He was excited about it. And that's what you want. My dad was in retail all his life. He was a jeweler. And he cared. He cared about watches. He cared about how they were made. But he also, if you picked up a piece of jewellery with, say, a gemstone in it, he'd be able to tell you not just where that gemstone was likely from out of the number of places, but how geologically it was formed. Now, some people say, well, I don't care about that, but actually that was part of how customer service used to be. People did care about that, and it's interesting.
It's part of the experience, and I feel sorry for the younger generation that are growing up without this, because it seems retail is a lost art. And it seems also, and this now leads us into our main topic, that people have lost all sense of what business actually is, and it seems that greed is the watchword now, and that's never more true, I think, than this particular case that's going on against Apple.
Yeah.
So Epic Games are basically claiming Apple's App Store is unfair, that it stifles competition. In fact, it's not just Epic that are saying that. We've got Spotify, Tinder, Tile. They're all wading in on this situation.
Yeah.
And we saw a letter that Apple had written in response to testimony that was given by Spotify, Tinder, and Tile. Now, obviously, this is some Apple PR and gamesmanship, but you can verify the facts that we're going to talk about today. And I'm sure that there's more to the claims that have been put forward. But at the end of the day, I just think it shows the companies for what they are when they resort to these kind of silly claims. So let's cover off a few of them. And before we do that, what do we think about the actual App Store? Is it a fair thing?
Well, you've got to look at it from two perspectives. One, is it right for consumers? And then is it right for the businesses that develop, or developers who develop on there? So consumers first, I would say it certainly gives you confidence, because unlike, Google, you got the Google Play Store, but there are other Android app stores available, and we're fairly tech savvy, so we would probably do our due diligence. But how often do you hear about someone, say, let's just take Windows for example, someone will download something off a website and install ransomware or something nefarious in the background because they just genuinely don't know. Well, I would say the App Store by and large gives you confidence that you're in a safe environment for downloading stuff to your device. So I think from a consumer point of view, that's good.
I think it's worth just saying as well, from the developer point of view, we've seen it from the other side as well. We've seen how Apple do check every single app that you submit, and they will reject stuff, and they'll tell you why they've rejected it if it doesn't comply with their terms and conditions. And that should give you confidence as well as a consumer that you're getting a consistent level of protection and quality. Doesn't mean that some things won't slip through. I'm sure they will, but for the main part, Apple are doing more than anyone else, it would seem, to protect users of the App Store.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a cost to that. There's the cost of the infrastructure to host and develop the software that supports the App Store, and the process to vet and review the apps, and also support the developers in that. It's a time-consuming process, but they do it. Interestingly, Apple themselves said that they saved a potential $1.5 billion in fraudulent transactions last year, 2020. Now, we'll obviously go into this in a bit more detail in a minute. The Epic Games camp, as it were, will argue, but things still get through. Well, that's true, but no system is perfect. Of course, things are going to get through. But I put to you that the standards on the Google Play Store are much weaker. You can basically develop something for the Google Play Store, pop it up, and it's up the same day. So no one's really checking that, or at least not up front. They might retrospectively check it.
Well, you can see in the past when I've looked at the Google Play Store, there's all sorts of stuff on there that would just never get approved on the Apple App Store.
No.
So they're a lot more flexible. I think it would be useful just to cover off the business model of the App Store and cover off some of the claims that get made about this. So first of all, before there was an App Store, if you're a developer, you have to invest in all of the equipment yourself. You've got to write your own software from scratch or using a framework. You then have to find a publisher who's happy to front the money to produce the physical media and to get the product out there to the wholesalers who are marking it up again, who send it to the retailers who are marking it up again for the consumers. So the developer probably would end up getting, Apple assert that it was about 30%.
Yeah, back in the 90s when everything was disc or tape before that.
Yeah, and I can completely believe that. Maybe you would get 30%. And that's a massive disincentive to develop, because back in the 90s, it was much easier. The games were much smaller, weren't they? Less complicated, because the computer equipment was less complicated. At the end of the day, writing a game of Pong, of course that's way before the 90s, but you know what I mean. Writing a game of Pong is not the same as, you know, a AAA title today, and the amount of work that goes into that. You have enormous teams working on these things
Well,
for years.
they're like Hollywood epics, aren't they? You know.
So that's the old model. Apple weren't the first people to bring in an app store. But the idea behind the app store is that Apple give the developers all of the tools they need to do the job. And I think this gets glossed over when people are criticizing Apple's app store. You know, Google do the same thing. They provide a developer kit. It's not as polished as Apple's, as far as my experience would say. You know, Apple give you the Xcode app. You've got all of these amazing APIs and tools that you can use in your code. You don't have to write stuff from scratch because there are libraries that you can make use of that Apple has developed. And they give you the information in how to use it and implement it. So this means that young people, especially, have been able to set up businesses writing apps. Lots of people have got into writing apps who wouldn't otherwise be able to do it. And these are individuals, not massive teams.
Yeah.
Because they're able to build upon that scaffold, that framework that Apple's provided.
Ecosystem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing is worth mentioning as well is marketing. You know, that's in front of that audience straight away. It's you know, when you used to publish games back in the 80s and the 90s, do you remember? I used to remember going into you know, the local supermarket and seeing what tape games there were for my Spectrum, and they were like, you know, $7.99 or something back then. But you know, you had to just take your pick of what was there at the time. There was no guarantee. But now everyone can get access to everything. You know, and that puts potentially your app. Yes, there are algorithms that bring more popular stuff to the top, and you can pay for promotion. But it does put your work in front of a global audience.
And of course, there's now the arcade as well, where Apple will work with developers, and that's a slightly different business model. But for most developers on the App Store, what happens is Apple take a commission. And this, I think, is one of the areas that gets so, what's the word? Misrepresented. So I've got a little chart here. Before Apple's App Store launched, you had the Fandango App Store, which charged 40%. We've got Steam, Microsoft Store, the Xbox Store. They all charged 30%, long before Apple did. You got the PlayStation Store. I can't see all these others. A couple more stores as well. They all charge 30%. And then since Apple launched, you've then got Google Play, you've got the BlackBerry Store, HP, Ovi, something else, Windows, Opera.
Galaxy Store, that is.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few here on the chart, and they're all charging 30%. No one's charging less than 30%. That's what it looks like there. However, Apple does charge less than 30%. So if you're a small business, you don't pay 30%, you pay 15%.
Yeah.
So if your apps on the App Store, your total sales each year comes to less than $1 million, you pay 15%, not 30%. I think, you know, all of these comments that you get about Apple stifling developers, that's
Far from it.
To get 85% of your revenue, that's, as a small developer, that would be amazing.
Yeah. If anything, it's encouraging, particularly small developers. It's not stifling development in the least. You know.
And the other thing as well, and we're starting to. I'm sorry, I'm going off your notes here, Pete.
That's all right.
That's out of order here, but subscriptions, for example, if you do a subscription payment through Apple, they charge 30% in the first year, if I've got this right.
Yep.
And 15% in subsequent years.
That's right. So this is one of the things that Spotify was part of their arguments. That oh, we pay 30%, and they conveniently didn't mention what you've just said. If you subscribe beyond a year, your in-app. This is the other thing we'll come to in a minute. Then in year 2 and onwards, Apple only take 15% of that subscription fee. Now, I don't think you use Spotify, but I do, and I've been subscribed to them for several years. I don't recall them passing on the discount.
No, they don't. They don't pass on the discount. Which
seems a bit disingenuous. If this was really about the consumer and making things fair and competitive, well, pass the saving on. But of course they won't do that because it's a nonsense argument. Particularly when you think about the fact that you take Spotify, you take Netflix, you take Disney Plus, any of these kind of Tidal. Yeah, you can sign up and subscribe through the App Store, and that's convenient. I'll give you that. But where else can you subscribe?
Well, via their website, which is what most people do.
Yeah. So what these companies are basically saying is, there's this payment channel that's really convenient for users that Apple charge for at a rate that they've set, which actually, as we've established, seems pretty reasonable. There are other channels available, but it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't seem like a credible argument.
No, and I think a lot of this also overlooks the fact that Apple has changed things. They have changed their commission structure. I'm pretty sure that there are, for anyone who's directly competing with Apple, they don't charge anything now. But there's an interesting point that's made in this letter that we referred to, where Spotify's witness testimony for this Epic versus Apple case said something along the lines of paying Apple's 30% tax would have forced us to raise consumer prices, conveniently forgetting the fact that Apple actually reduced the commission to Spotify and their prices did not get reduced to their customers. So it's all a bit of gamesmanship and greed and nonsense. And fair enough, you want to play those games, and let's be honest, Apple plays those games as well. But if you're going to play those games, you've got to make sure that you're stating facts that are actually verifiable and true, and that you don't come out of it looking like a turkey, which I think they have.
And we're no experts in law, but there seems to be a consensus. But there isn't actually any kind of civil or criminal grievance here. It is basically just like, we think this is unfair, and that's the centering of their arguments, really.
Yeah, something else that they argue about is, of course, the digital versus physical, and they conflate the two. So they'll be saying, well, why do we have to pay a commission on the subscription payments, whereas Uber doesn't, for example? And the simple thing is, Apple has always, ever since the launch of the Apple Store, they've always differentiated between a digital service and a physical service. Let's be honest here. The cost of providing a digital service is usually fairly negligible. The files are already there. Spotify has got all its music files already there.
Once you've done it, once you've developed it, once you've
it pays absolute peanuts to the artists. Artists hate Spotify because they get next to nothing out of it. They're fractions of a penny each time you play one of their records. It's really bad for artists. So just as a side point, if you appreciate your artists and the music they make, buy a CD as well. And you'll enjoy better quality. But just
if you've got a CD player.
It's not like Spotify have to go to great expense to sell something, whereas, an Uber driver obviously has very obvious expenses that are easy to and tangible. And so that difference between a physical thing that you receive and a digital thing, someone's selling loot crates or something,
you're trading in intellectual value. A loot crate is, or some kind of in-game thing that gives you access to something. All you're buying is the right to use something that's already there. That there is no product developed. You think just about this physical device in front of us. There are tangible costs, like you say, with an Uber driver. There's a tangible cost. Even if you order a coffee online, there's a cost. It may be an inflated cost, but that's for another podcast. The thing is that they aren't the same, and that's the mistake so many businesses have made, and kind of goes back to what we were saying about the death of the high street, is not recognising that online and physical are two different things and have different characteristics that you need to take account of.
And also some of the same characteristics which would need to be taken account of. It seems like a lot of companies get it wrong.
And we're no experts.
No,
we're just two grumpy old men.
We are. Spotify also talks about Apple prohibiting developers from communicating with their customers, which is just not actually true, I don't think. And that's verified in the fact that the majority of Spotify subscribers sign up outside of Apple. And this is Epic's issue as well, is that they can't have a payment service. But what they can have a payment service outside of Apple. People can go and subscribe to Epic that outside of the App Store and then download an app. But what Epic tried to do is to redirect users to a different payment structure within the App Store. And that, I've read Apple's terms and conditions for developers, and that is a direct contravention of the terms of the developer agreement. You can't do that. So that's what Apple is saying. And I've seen Apple promoting Spotify within the App Store. They do promote their competitors. And I've seen that with my own eyes. So, you know, whether they get a fair amount of airtime compared to Apple's own products is another question. But certainly Apple do that.
Definitely.
And the final thing I want to say as well about Spotify, of course, is that they work on a freemium model. And by that, I mean the app is free. The subscription services are extra. So if your app is free, you do not pay Apple a commission. To be clear, though, you do have to pay Apple a annual fee. It's not a massive fee. It's $120 or something.
I'm pretty sure Spotify can probably manage it.
They can probably cover it. But it's important to say that for, you know, if you've got an independent developer, Apple will give all of the tools away for free until the point where you want to submit an app to the App Store. At that point, you must join the paid-for Apple Developer Program with an annual fee. So just let's be clear about that. But if your app is free, Apple won't charge you any commissions on that at all. So I don't see that Spotify really have much of an argument. It seems that, you know, Apple thought the same, which is why they went down this road. But let's move it on to another complainant.
Yes.
Tinder.
I know, obviously, we all know about swipe left, swipe right through popular culture, but I don't know about that service at all. I've never downloaded Tinder. I've never needed to.
Well, as a happily married man, I don't suppose you need to, nor do I.
So, yeah, I mean, just looking through it and trying to distill it down into, as I've tried to, one bullet point here is, again, what seems to have happened with Tinder or Match, which is a company that owned Tinder or developed Tinder, is that what they were trying to do was muddy the waters between a fairly contentious issue and actually what the issue was that had caused an app to get stuck in review, which was them breaking the terms and conditions around payment again.
Yeah, this absolutely stuck out to me. I mean, they made a lot of the same sort of claims as Spotify, which I don't think we need to cover those, but I do want to focus in on this one.
Go on.
So the witness basically said that Apple take ages to review stuff. When they reject something, they're not clear about why something's been rejected. And then they said that a change that they'd made, which provides additional safety for members of the LGBTQ+, I don't even know what all of those things are, community. And so Tinder is saying, Apple delayed this, you know, and make it an issue around people's gender preferences and sexual orientation.
Yeah.
You know, which is a hot potato, isn't it?
Definitely a hot potato.
And the thing is, they just didn't think this through. You know, Apple is hardly homophobic, is it? And it's a very all-inclusive company, and the simple truth that they conveniently forget to put in is that they were trying in the same update to change a subscription pricing feature within their app, which violated Apple's terms and conditions. So they submitted multiple changes. So it included this safety feature for the LGBT community, and it also included this subscription pricing feature.
Yeah, which would have violated the Federal Trade Commission rules.
Yeah, that's it.
So it winds me up when this happens, when you've got an issue that people get very passionate about, and someone then uses that as a reason to rile people up, when actually it's not the issue at all. Mm-hmm. It was not that issue at all. It smacks of, I don't know what the word is, but it's not good, is it?
Well, they're just trying to politicise the issue to get some vocal support, because the sad truth is that we live in a world where people will jump on the bandwagon without actually bothering to do any research, and it's this kind of stuff that will get people het up and campaigning and joining Tinder's side. It's disingenuous. That's a polite way of putting it.
Yeah.
Unscrupulous, I would say. I mean, it's a poor way to do business. I don't think Tinder have covered themselves in any glory there. I think they've just made themselves look a bit silly. I mean, they also made claims that Apple wasn't protecting underage users from downloading Tinder, but again, complete nonsense. Apple provide parental controls. Every app that my kids download, I have to approve.
Yeah, same here.
So if
my
I saw
21-year-old's not happy about that. Particularly as he's got an Android phone. No, but my 13-year-old, yeah, everything. Sometimes I've been here doing a podcast or something, and pop up comes something. It's like, go away, deal with that later.
Anyway, as Apple correctly pointed out, if Tinder's users are putting in false birth dates, then blocking the download of the app ain't going to fix the problem. Kids are great at finding ways to work around stuff like this if they particularly want to. What about Tile? We did cover part of this, didn't we?
Yeah, I like Tile. The more I find out about AirTags, the more I'm liking
AirPads. I'm sorry. That sounds like the sort of product that would feature in a TV commercial with a roller skating lady wearing hot pants.
For a man of a certain age.
Pete, I've got your AirPads. You're okay.
That does remind me of a story. A few years ago, I was in a supermarket near us, and a woman walked by with a trolley stacked that high with 10 men. And then she walked by. She obviously saw that I clocked it, and I don't think I'd made a face at all, but she just looked at me with a knowing eye. She says, "It's a long story." I'd be interested to know in the comments, what do you think that story was? Who knows? So Tile, perfectly good product. One of the things that they've complained about is the fact that as iOS has been developed. Sorry, I'm waffling a bit there because I want to say iOS. We always want to say
it is iOS.
iOS. Some people insist on it being iOS. As new versions get updated, Apple make changes. And Tile got a bit upset about, I think it was in iOS 13, some changes to location services permissions, which probably is recent enough for a lot of people to remember. There were some changes there that impaired the experience for Tile users. And we can relate to that, can't we, as Apple developers? It is extremely frustrating sometimes when Apple do change the goalposts. Admittedly, they normally give you fairly good notice, and that's what things like WWDC are for as well. But they do change the goalposts, and yes, certain things that used to be allowed are no longer allowed. But that's true of lots of things in tech. You used to be able to sort of opt people into marketing lists without a buy or leave, but now you can't. And it's like, well, things change, and people want more privacy, particularly when it comes to location services. So Apple made some changes, and Tile got a little bit bent out of shape about that.
Yeah, but as Apple point out, Tile does store user data and user location data, whereas Apple does not.
Yeah.
With AirTags, it's all anonymized, and see, Tile collects that data. They store it on their own servers. Apple doesn't do that. The Find My stuff is stored locally on the device, and it's encrypted. And we haven't got time to go into all the detail on that, but Apple defends privacy. I think they do a pretty good job of that. They're very open about it. They even publish the number of times, you can find it on their website, the number of times that they've responded to government requests and how often they've given data over, etc., etc. And they do give data over to the government because they're obliged to do so. But generally speaking, Apple does more for privacy than many other companies do. Just say, I quite like using Windows 10. This isn't any kind of rag on Windows at all, but I do get a little bit irritated when I get adverts popping up in my start menu. And that's the default. You've got to switch all of that stuff off. But Microsoft does way more to steal people's data than Apple do, as does Google. They're doing way more tracking than Apple does. And then, as are Tile, and then Tile come forward and basically say, well, you're making our product out to look like it's doing something dodgy because you're asking people for their permission for us to store their data. It's like, well, I kind of think that's a pretty good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. So 0 point so far for Tile. What about the U1 chip? Because what they're saying is, the Apple devices, the newer ones have got the U1 chip in, which enables you to pinpoint where your device is, but we're not allowed to use that. Third parties aren't allowed to use that.
Well, they will be able to. That is true, but they will be able to soon. And what's more, Apple's gone further than this. They are opening up the specification for the ultra-wideband technology. So the specification will be open. The developers will be able to use it. People will be able to make stuff that supports it. So I don't think it's unreasonable that Apple, having developed something and put all the time and effort into it, that when they're later going to give that away to everybody, that they make a little bit of money out of it first.
Yeah, that's not unusual. You know, again, you look back at, you get exclusive deals with certain brands only being available for a period of time in a certain area. Well, you know, if you've developed something, why can't you have the spoils of that for a time? You know, that's what patents and things are for. Patents.
Well, it's entirely reasonable, but these are not. You know, when you've decided that you've polarized a position and you're against the Apple App Store, and in Tile's case, you know, they've had ample opportunity to change the way that they work, and have chosen not to do that, and are now griping about it. But once they're in that position, they're now looking for things to complain about.
Yeah, and Tile have been around for years. I mean, it's not like they came out 6 months ago and now suddenly AirTags are there. Like, you know, Tile have had their opportunity to sort of cement their place in the market. And again, I like Tile, but they haven't done that. So do Apple go, oh, well, we better not go into this market because, you know, Tile, that's business. Do you know what I mean?
Well, Apple went into it despite knowing Tile's sales figures through the Apple Store.
Yeah, which they're saying gave them an advantage. But, you know...
Sorry, Tile is saying it gave Apple an advantage.
Yeah. Because they did sell tiles in the Apple retail stores and online for a time. But to be fair, first of all, it wasn't the main channel by which tiles were sold. It was mainly other retail stores or the Tile website. And Apple said in their letter they did not sell well.
I quite enjoyed that.
So, if anything, you know, if you were doing market research, should we go into this market? It's like, well, we've got this, you know, the established player in this market is Tile, and we've got a percentage of their data here. Let's see what they're doing. If someone came back to you, Dave, and said, well, actually, they're not selling that well, you know, they're not being taken up that well, what is that likely to do to your decision?
Well, I probably would consider whether or not we should be pursuing the same product line or a similar product line.
Absolutely. So, you know, I don't think the data was what shaped Apple's decision. Tile's data was not what shaped Apple's decision there. Again, it just feels like throwing mud in the hope that some of it will stick.
So, to be clear, Tile don't use Apple's Find My network. Their app doesn't use it at all, so they won't have access to any of the Find My stuff that other developers have unless they choose to rewrite their app, which they won't do because their business model relies on subscription income and other things. One final thing that they said about Apple as well is that the Find My service was in a direct competitor to Tile when it was introduced, and that's not actually true at all, because until AirTags came out, the Find My service is limited to finding
Apple devices.
It's not a means of finding other devices, which is Tile's, you know, particular focus. So I think their arguments are fairly weak, to be honest. Now, in all of this, we haven't really gone into any of Epic's arguments against Apple, and I think that's a deliberate choice, really, because there are a lot of very passionate Fortnite players. It is Fortnite, isn't it? Epic did.
It is. Yeah. Until last week. See what I did there?
Until last week.
Maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh, Pete, you're doing dad jokes again. I got my brain in like serious mode, and then you throw in something like that.
Everyone loves a dad joke, you know. Everyone loves it when you're in a hole surrounded by water. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean well.
Yeah.
I stole your joke there.
You did. Thanks for that.
It's all right. Honestly, scraping the bottom of the bucket there.
Yeah.
Let's move on. You've made some comments here in our notes about the EU Commission.
Yeah, so the EU Commission has stated that Apple unfairly favoured Apple Music over Spotify and its competitors as part of all this hoo-ha. And you know, as you've established already, Apple have promoted it and do promote its competitors in the App Store. But I think there's a really salient point here that all these commissions and all these companies are completely missing, which is, I'm not an Apple fanboy. We've established that. Neither are you. But I appreciate Apple products. I use Apple products. I like their ecosystem. I do not have an Apple TV subscription. In fact, I didn't even take up the free one. I do not have an Apple Music subscription. I did not take up the free one. Every time I get a new Apple device, you get a 3-month optional trial. I do like Apple Fitness, but I don't use it now because I'm back in the gym. I prefer Spotify. And actually, if I was going for lossless again, I'd go back to Tidal. I like how Tidal does stuff as well. I prefer Netflix, Disney Plus, all of those systems. Why? What do you think?
Well, I suspect it's because you can use it on any platform, especially things like Tidal as well. You can go and buy hi-fi kit that supports Tidal. There's nothing out there, as far as I'm aware, that supports Apple Music.
Well, yeah, all those things are true, but the main reason is because they give a better user experience, in my opinion. The amount of times, and I do have a catalogue of movies I've bought on iTunes and TV shows, which obviously now interface with Apple TV. But Apple have failed miserably to deliver the same viewing experience that Netflix does, both in terms of streaming quality. How often have you had it where I use particularly if I'm watching something again, I'll use the rewind 10 seconds to just, what did they say there? Or because you want to look at a little bit of a detail in a film or a movie. Netflix and Disney Plus and others do that pretty seamlessly. It will go back. I rarely do it on an Apple title or an Apple delivered movie, because invariably what will happen is you'll hit back 10 seconds or 15 seconds and it will just go, it's just, the interface is just not as intuitive. It's not as smooth. And the same is true for Apple Music, in my opinion. It's harder to find what you're looking for. Spotify have nailed that. Netflix have nailed that. And, Tidal, Disney Plus, to a degree, Amazon have got some good features, actually, that, Netflix could learn from. They've all learnt from that, whereas Apple seem to always want to go their own way. And because of that, they don't get my business in that area. So it doesn't matter if, Apple have, of course, put their product forward. It's rubbish. So I don't use it.
Well, I'd agree with you on some of those things. I think one thing that does frustrate me on the Apple TV, when you go to iTunes to buy a movie, you can't see the rating information or the price until you've clicked into it. So if you've got a load of stuff on your wish list, I know this works better on your iPad, but on the Apple TV, you go into your wish list, there's no way to see which titles are on offer. I put stuff in my wish list to wait for the prices to become sensible. But you have to literally go through every title on the wish list. And the same thing if you want to check a rating, and you can't filter out anything. So you get presented with images that you maybe just don't want to see. And Apple TV, the actual subscription service, apart from the fact it's not really providing much in the way of content, a lot of the content that it provides is not suitable for family viewing. And I tried to watch that, I think we might have mentioned this before on the channel, that Ted Lasso thing, and I had to turn it off because I just couldn't cope with the deluge of foul language in it. And there was no fair warning of that before putting it on.
And Netflix are really good at telling you that, aren't they? They will tell you everything about it. It's not just the rating, because sometimes, on a rare occasion, you will get a film with a higher rating because it contains what you would call adult themes, and I don't mean raunchy scenes by that. I mean discussions around, say, suicide or things like that you may not want younger children to watch. So I like the fact that, as well as the age rating, it then tells you why it's got that, and that helps you make an informed decision. Apple just haven't done that.
Well, you can also go onto the Netflix website and you can filter your account, can't you, by categories and ratings for films, but you can also type in keywords as well. So if there's certain things that you just don't want to see in your feed, or particular movies that you don't want to see, you can just type the name in. And that's a bit of a long job, but it means that when I
you can
switch
do
my
it.
TV on with the family in the room, what we get presented with is content that we might actually be able to watch together as a family, rather than having to filter through all these horrific, some of those 18 horror movies. They're just the front covers are horrific, and you mentioned raunchy stuff. I don't want to put that on in front of my
My
young
children.
lads.
No.
So why Apple go to these great lengths? In fact, they talked about this in that letter we just referred to about how they provide parental restrictions, and they do, but they don't provide an easy way of filtering that stuff out on your Apple TV, as far as I'm aware, unless you're going to allow your children to log in with their own account, which I think you can do now, and you can probably restrict it that way. But restricting by age rating doesn't cover it all,
No.
because there are things within an age rating. I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the UK, our system is we go from sort of universal, which is fit for everybody, to parental guidance, and then you go up to a 12. And it used to be the case that a 12 could have one F word in it. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. It can have a whole number of those expletives. So if you're sensitive to that, that's now a problem, because more recently rated movies will include more foul language than older ones.
And I don't know about your children, but many children are sensitive to certain topics, certain subjects. So something might have an age rating that you would fall within the range of your children, but you know that they would be terrified by it. I mean, there were certain things when I was absolutely terrified of E.T. Okay, absolutely scared witless. I love science fiction now, but I was scared witless. So some children are sensitive to that thing. So you might want to say, well, I don't want to see any sci-fi, for example, or anything of this particular genre, because it distresses my child. And you can't filter that out. So maybe we're onto something there, Apple. Maybe you should employ us as consultants to help you with that, and we charge 30%.
I think the simple solution is that we don't want Apple to curate content for us, because Apple does not know what we want, and their algorithms will never be able to take into account an entire family. And the simple truth is, it doesn't matter if you put user accounts on an Apple TV; it's logged into my account because it's in the lounge. And so when I switch on the TV, I don't want stuff appearing that my children can't watch. So I won't watch stuff like that anyway, because I don't want it to be present for the boys to see. So give us some control. Let us curate stuff. Tell us if you're going to unnecessarily stuff a load of foul language into a comedy program about football. Be upfront about that, and let us know, so that we don't waste our time watching, and then stop force feeding it to us when we've already sort of thumbed it down and suggested we may not like it. But,
spot on.
Yeah.
But the point is, all these things, these apps that compete with Apple, I've never thought, do you know what? I think I will go with Apple TV because I can do in-app purchase. It's never occurred to me. So it's just another payment channel. Yes, occasionally you might not buy something from a certain place if they don't accept checks. No, you don't do that anymore, do you? Do you see what I mean? It's just like you have your choices, and you make it based on that. So there we go.
All right, let's move on, because I'd like to just do a couple of comments before we finish. And we just wanted to mention as well about the podcast schedule. So at the moment, we try to do a weekly podcast, and I think we'll probably try to continue doing that, but it's probably not going to be every week. We have work that it's very much peaks and troughs, isn't it, with our work? So there'll be times when we're very busy and doing the podcast. It's probably not ideal this week, in fairness, with all the work we've got lined up. So we just wanted to give you a heads up on that. It may not necessarily be every week. We'd like to bring content that's relevant as well. And
some weeks are dry weeks.
Some weeks are dry weeks. I wonder how many people are going to watch this week. But there we go. or listen. Of course, if you want to watch us, it's youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast. Should have done that earlier.
Yeah.
I just wanted to also mention schedule a posting for the main channel as well. I've got the review on the Apple Magic Keyboard, which I'll be filming after we've done this. I've then got a whole queue of stuff coming in for review.
Have you?
Loads and loads of stuff. And quite excitingly as well, Pepper Jobs are sending me their the Extend Touch Pro, which has just been released. I think I'm going to be the first in the UK to get a review of one of those. So quite excited about that.
That is exciting.
They're also sending me a fanless PC, mini PC to test, and some other bits and pieces. So I'll feature those on the channel as we go. Got an interesting product coming as well for the M1 Mac Mini, which is a USB hub with space for a hard drive in it that sits underneath your Mac Mini.
Really?
Mm.
Oh, that does sound interesting.
Yeah, so quite looking forward to that. So yeah, plenty of stuff coming on the main channel, and lots of people have asked as well about where are we ever going to finish the survey, the SSD survey. Obviously, that got a little bit delayed because of personal issues, and it's not that we're struggling to put the data together; it's just that we haven't had time to do it yet. So we will get onto that soon, Pete. Please.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. A few comments. Casper said that we're sitting on the wrong sides and we need to swap spots.
Really? I feel very comfortable where I am.
I'm quite comfortable here. What he doesn't know is that everything's mirrored anyway, so perhaps we are on the right side.
Yeah. How do you know?
Or
that?
are we?
Or, you could probably tell if there's a logo. Yeah, there's a logo on the back of your thing, so he knows what the case is. But yeah, sorry about that, Casper.
Turns out I spelt elusive wrong in when I put up the.
Do you not-
I knew something looked wrong about it. You know, when you look at something, you think something's wrong, but I'm so tired I can't figure out what it is.
I saw a spelling mistake the other day for a Grand Tour video, an official Grand Tour video, and it really griped me. And I thought there's going to be loads of people in the comments saying you've spelt that wrong, and no one had said it. And I didn't want to be that one guy that said it and looked like I was being really, really pedantic. So I didn't say anything, but it was spelt wrong. Does that bother anyone else? Who knows?
Well, a couple of people, anyway, we got it wrong. I suggested it might have been UPS in the film Castaway with Tom Hanks, but Madison 10 and also Kyle corrected me there. It was FedEx. So
there you go.
Thanks, guys. That's good. Someone suggested destroying the Chromebook by throwing it in an active volcano.
Yeah, I'd be up for that, but unfortunately we can't.
We can't. It's on its way to Canada land, I believe. Yeah. Very exciting. We sent it via UPS. No, we didn't. Somebody said, Mr. Vija iTech said the show was so good he watched it twice. That was last week's Cheap Tech. Which
Thanks, Vija.
Mm,
Casper said something else as well.
Go on.
That we should talk to Lewis Rossman because he'll talk to anyone, which is, I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but about Right to Repair on the main channel.
I would be, I've watched a lot of Lewis Rossman's videos and I do agree with a lot of the things he says.
He does seem to have. I watched one on. He was talking about doing business in New York. How difficult it is to have a physical bricks and mortar place in New York. Going through all the cost of it, and it did remind me of the sort of conversations that you and I have. So maybe there would be some, synergy there. But whether Lewis would condescend to speak to our little channel, who knows? But if maybe we can reach out and see if he's interested in doing something.
Yeah, perhaps. I think we post obviously a lot of. I think we're probably a bit more favourable towards Apple than Lewis is. But if we were in his position, Apple have actively tried to shut his business down, and so I completely understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
And I agree with a lot that he says, especially on Right to Repair. I think for us, I don't want to get too political, and Right to Repair has become a very political issue, and it's something we always said we'd steer away from on the channel. So I fundamentally agree that we should be able to repair products. I think it's better for the environment, it's better for the customer. I think it's better for Apple as well, because they'll have a larger customer base and they can sell more subscription services. So I don't understand at all why they're so against Right to Repair. But I don't want to actively campaign for it or anything like that. I don't want to get involved politically, as it were. But I'd be very interested to talk to Lewis Rossman anyway.
Yeah, I would be. And another comment here, Sunday Racers. Hopefully you have got your enriched uranium now. It should have come to the door. I did have a visit on the door from two men in black asking about it as well. So I am just going to go on air as saying NSA MI6 or MI5 or whoever might be listening to this, it was a joke, okay? We don't have any enriched uranium. We prefer plutonium. So, yeah.
Thank you. One final comment then. This one's from Ralph Weyer, or Veyer, depending on where he is in the world. He managed to hook himself up with a nice hardware-calibrated monitor.
Ooh, yes, I saw that.
Wow, €600 off. He got it for €800. Good bargain hunting, Ralph. Well done. There is tech out there at cheaper prices. You just got to be patient and hunt around for it.
I do have a question on one of the comments because you can't always tell with comments whether they're sarcastic or not. Shapeshifter Boogie, a regular subscriber, says that pencil story was riveting. More, please.
I suspect some sarcasm may be involved.
Honestly,
I
can't wring any more out of a lost Apple Pencil that the dog chewed and then managed to pair to himself. I'm really scraping the barrel, but yeah, let me know if you do want more pencil stories. I will endeavour to try and come up with something that is at least mildly entertaining in the next week.
Indeed, and this is, we're looking at the clock on the audio recorder, and it's saying 1 hour, which I suspect is pretty close to accurate, and we should shut up.
Yeah. So if you're just gradually drifting off into bye-bye land now, this has been the Constant Geekery podcast. Sleep dreams.
Sleep dreams? What of sort?
Yeah, daydreams. Sweet dreams.
It's always good to finish on a blooper, and so I think we should just quit whilst we're not ahead. Say thanks for watching or listening, and see you next week or the week after, depends on how things go.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.